Story 1. If you have a plastic jug of grape juice and you open it, drink some, put the cap back on, and then lose that closed jug underneath your bed for a long time, it will explode fermented, sticky, foul-smelling juice all over the place. I think that is a fun fact. Story 2. Your brain can simulate the feeling of your tongue on a surface you can see, even without physical contact. Look at something near you right now and picture licking it. Story 3. Lobsters do not age, but even under perfect conditions, they never survive past a certain age. This is because every time lobsters shed their exoskeleton, it becomes a bit tougher. After a certain point, it becomes too tough to shed. So the lobster literally gets stuck in its own shell and dies. Story 4. The Soviet Union was the first country in the world to legalize free abortions in 1920. The Soviet regime sought to support women's rights and feminism due to the Bolshevik Party's large female population. It enabled women to pursue education and work. However, household duties still pressured women to stay at home. Social programs such as childcare, communal kitchens, and laundries were underfunded. Under the Soviet Union, marriages were conducted under communism instead of the church. Wyoming was the first place in the world to legalize women's right to vote in 1869. Story 5. When the Milky Way galaxy and the Andromeda galaxy eventually collide, it is unlikely that anything will crash into anything. Space is vast, and there is no better name for it. Story 6. Martin Van Buren was the first United States president to be born in the United States after 1776. He is also the only United States president so far who did not speak English as a first language. He spoke Dutch. Story 7. If you add all the numbers on a Monte Carlo-style roulette wheel, the total equals 666. There is no real intrinsic meaning unless you are superstitious. It is just an interesting oddity. Story 8. If you leave prune juice out on the counter for a week and then open it, it will explode in your face with a force that will knock off your glasses. This is based on first-hand knowledge. Story 9. Humans can smell rain better than sharks can smell blood. In our early history, humans developed this ability because we needed to find water and determine if it was safe. There is a compound called geosmin that humans can detect at 1 part per billion, whereas sharks can detect blood at 1 part per million. Story 10. Tyrannosaurus rex is more closely related to the songbirds at your bird feeder than it is to the ceratopsians that it preyed upon. Story 11. Your brain has never actually seen the world. It is just interpreting electrical signals from your eyes. You are basically hallucinating with consensus. Story 12. Approximately 100 years after your death, no one will remember you or speak your name. Story 13. All natural coal is the same age across the world because the deposits that turned into coal were from a time when trees were around, but no bacteria had been able to decompose them. Story 14. Earth chronically suffers large-scale volcanism, large space impacts, and other devastating disasters that could bring civilization to its knees. The fact that humans have such a large civilization is because Earth temporarily allows it. But at any moment, the whims of fate could cause 11 years of volcanic winter and an entire region of the planet to be covered in lava. Look up flood basalts and large igneous provinces. Story 15. You are closer in time to the Tyrannosaurus rex than the Tyrannosaurus rex was to the Stegosaurus. While it is easy to think of the age of dinosaurs as a single period, it actually spanned about 165 million years. Story 16. There are people who were born after I was who are older than me. I was born at 12:26 a.m. in the United States Eastern Time Zone on November 6th. For the next 34 minutes, it was still November 5th in the Central Time Zone. Anyone born there during that time was born after me. They were also born the day before I was. They reached adulthood at 18 the day before I did. They reached legal drinking age at 21 the day before I did. By any legal measure, they are older than me. The same is true for longer periods of time, in every time zone going west to the international dateline. Story 17. Octopuses have 3 hearts, and when they mate, they often die shortly afterward. So technically, love does kill. Story 18. No one knows how eels mate. When they are dissected, scientists have not been able to find any reproductive organs, but they are still reproducing somehow. Story 19. Most of a shrimp's vital organs are located in its skull, since that bone is the thickest in its body. Story 20. I won the Walt Disney World Photo of the Year in 2013. My photo was selected from approximately 240 million photos taken annually. Story 21. The letter J is the only letter not on the periodic table of elements. Speaking of letters, the letter Q is the only letter not seen in the name of any of the United States. Story 22. A pigeon will only eat a starburst if you chew it up a little first. Just to clarify, chew the starburst, not the pigeon. Story 23. Fun fact. If you see a cat rubbing its face on objects, including you, it is most likely marking them with its scent. Cats have scent glands on their faces that release pheromones when doing this. They are claiming ownership. Can also be a sign of affection or happiness, but when a cat rubs its face on something, it now belongs to them. You have lost it. Story 24. The reason paid is not autocorrected to paid is because paid is a real term. It relates to boats or something similar. Story 25. It's actually very easy to make a naan pizza. The only annoying part is the dough, which can be sticky enough to be bothersome, but it's not a big deal. Just remember that it's okay to add a bit of extra flour so it rolls out easier. Also, don't do what I did and put on about 200 toppings. It is not fun anymore. Story 26. The average distance between asteroids in an asteroid belt is 600,000 miles, which is more than twice the distance between Earth and the Moon. Story 27. Television was banned in Bhutan until 1999 when the Bhutan Broadcasting Service began transmitting. It was also the first country to fully ban tobacco. Story 28. Time travel is theoretically possible according to physics as currently understood. It is just very difficult to achieve. Story 29. There are about 500,000 species of beetles known to us, which is approximately half of all known insect species. The other half consists of all the other insects. The family of ladybugs has about 6,000 species. Story 30. If you drink orange juice through a straw, finish it, and pour Diet Cola into the same glass and drink that through a straw, it tastes like sparkling lemonade, but only if you are sick. Story 31. The towers of the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge in New York City are a quarter-inch farther apart at the top than they are at the bottom due to the curvature of the Earth. Story 32. You actually constantly see slightly in the past. Looking at yourself in a mirror 1 meter away, you are seeing your reflection about 6.7 nanoseconds delayed. Light travels 1 meter in approximately 3.3 nanoseconds, and back again. If you see a star explode, for example as a supernova, and it is 1,000 light-years away, that explosion actually happened 1,000 years ago. The light from that event took 1,000 years to reach Earth, so you are witnessing something that already happened a millennium ago. Story 33. Georgia Moffat is the daughter of Peter Davison, who played the Fifth Doctor on Doctor Who. She went to school with Lucy Baker, daughter of Colin Baker. She starred in the Doctor Who episode, The Doctor's Daughter. There she met David Tennant, fell in love, got married, and had a daughter. So, the Doctor's daughter went to school with the Doctor's daughter, played the Doctor's daughter in The Doctor's Daughter, married the Doctor, and gave birth to the Doctor's daughter. Time is more wibbly-wobbly than you ever thought. Story 34. Many deep-sea creatures are actually red. Red is the first color on the color spectrum to disappear when submerged in water, so the red coloration provides camouflage. Story 35. The famous John Denver song Country Roads is about the western part of the state of Virginia, not the state of West Virginia. Story 36. The original United States version of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fight scenes and scenes of them in their suits and Zords were just spliced in. Story 37. Not sure how impressive this is, but I rarely spend time researching players before a fantasy football draft. I just open a guide on the day of the draft, quickly skim through it, and then proceed to draft players based on previous knowledge and intuition. I have made the semifinals at the very least every year I have played, even with injury-riddled teams. Story 38. Okay, this blew my mind. There is actually a jellyfish that does not die of old age. It reaches adulthood and then reverts back to being a baby jellyfish. This process repeats forever. Nature's time traveler. Story 39. While the Beatles were at a hotel, George vomited on the floor. No one wanted to clean it, so, I am assuming out of pure boredom, they named it The Thing. They allegedly held a funeral for the thing after being forced to clean it. Story 40. The reason men have the instruction turn your head and cough at physical examinations is to ensure that their intestines are not at risk of herniating into the scrotum. Story 41. Banana plants and ginger plants are related. Both families belong to the orders and gibberels. Additionally, asparagus and orchids are both asparagales. Story 42. Everyone has abdominal muscles. Everyone has the muscles that comprise the rectus abdominis. They are just more developed and defined in some people than in others. Story 43. I had a great conversation and shared a bottle of champagne with Andre 3000 one night. We did not know who each other were. Story 44. Two girls, one cup was made using dyed dairy products designed to be safely consumed while appearing like excrement. This means no feces were consumed, but feces were inserted for the defecation shot. Story 45. There was no computer-generated imagery used in the Barbie movie. As a result, there was a worldwide shortage of pink paint. Story 46. Working for yourself is amazing and always better than working for someone else. Even when you work for someone, continue to work for yourself. Story 47. Since it is relevant and I used to work in and outside of the park, Everglades National Park is the only habitat in the world that is home to both alligators and crocodiles. Alligator and crocodile attacks are extremely rare inside the park. In fact, there are hardly any documented cases, and almost every incident involved people trying to illegally feed the alligators. I worked for 2 years for a business that offered guided tours into the Everglades. During that time, I had only one risky encounter when an alligator nipped my kayak paddle during mating season. I have also practiced a method to get rid of hiccups about 80 to 90% of the time. Extend and relax your stomach and diaphragm. It should look like you have a beer gut. For those already with a beer gut, it should look like you are pregnant. Stand up straight, lift your chin parallel to the ground, and breathe very slowly or hold your breath. You may place your hands on your stomach. Avoid swallowing, burping, coughing, or sudden breaths or movements. Do this for about 3 uninterrupted cycles of what would otherwise be hiccups. When they are gone, continue to keep your breath relatively slow and shallow. Avoid drinking, smoking, using a straw, coughing, or burping for a few minutes afterward. Also, try to limit swallowing during this time or swallow with very little force. In other words, avoid sudden muscle contractions of the stomach and diaphragm. Story 48. Lego is the largest tire manufacturer in the world. A male version of Hooters called Tallyhackers was opened in Texas. It lasted 6 months. McDonald's successfully engineered bubblegum-flavored broccoli to encourage children to eat more vegetables. It did not work. Story 49. Did you know that lightning is actually hotter than the surface of the sun? Lightning is about 30,000 degrees Celsius, while the sun is only about 5,500 degrees Celsius. Story 50. The head of the Central Intelligence Agency mind control program in the 1950s, named Gottlieb, loved lysergic acid diethylamide and is reported to have used it over 200 times himself. Story 51. Hitler fell in love with his niece. He was so overprotective of her that she ended up committing suicide, which caused him to become extremely depressed. He was also considering suicide at the time. It would have been remarkable if he had done so. I enjoy randomly bringing this up to surprise people. Story 52. Blobfish do not look like how people commonly think. They actually look different in their natural habitat. The images seen in memes are due to decompression damage. Story 53. Human milk is higher in fat and sugar than cow's milk and lower in protein. However, one cow at the peak of its breeding life produces up to 10 gallons of milk per day, which is enough to feed slightly more than 10 babies per day, depending on the baby. Cow's milk has a chemistry similar enough to human milk that, with adjustments such as breaking down the protein, the formula becomes nutritionally complete for a human baby. This is why cow's milk is commonly chosen for infant formula. Story 54. My college was funded by a philanthropist. He made his money by being a pilot and buying alcohol and cigarettes abroad, then selling them and making millions. He donated the money to colleges and died with very little wealth. A valid argument can be made that the college was founded on alcohol and smoking. Story 55. Got a list of 5 points that become increasingly specific and less commonly known. The highest mountain on Earth is Mount Everest, in the Himalayas on the border between Nepal and China. This is very common knowledge just to set the tone. The tallest mountain on Earth is technically Mauna Kea, in Hawaii, as its base is at the ocean floor. This is less well known. Neither of these mountains is the furthest point from the center of the Earth. That distinction belongs to Chimborazo in the Andes in Ecuador. This is due to the Earth's bulge at the equator caused by its rotation. Everest and Mauna Kea are at comparatively high latitudes, while Chimborazo is near the equator. One might think that the point furthest from the center of the Earth would have the lowest gravity, but that is actually the summit of Huascarán in Peru. Finally, none of these points is the furthest from Earth's rotational axis. That point is actually Cayambe in Ecuador. This makes the summit of Cayambe the fastest point on Earth. Story 56. About 300 million years ago, when trees died or fell, they did not rot. It took another 60 million years for fungi to evolve that could digest wood. Imagine forests of dead trees, seemingly stuck in time and never decomposing, with the wood as fresh as the day it fell or died for 60 million years. New plants and trees grew around that dead timber, creating a very deep forest floor. Much of the coal we have today comes from this process. A similar situation is happening today at the Chernobyl site. In places where radiation levels are highest, bacteria and fungi cannot survive. As a result, things are not decomposing or breaking down as they normally would. Everything appears stuck in time again. It is wild to think about. Story 57. In the original Japanese manga and anime, the famous meme line "It's over 9,000" from Dragon Ball was actually 8,000. Story 58. Pluto has a subsurface ocean of liquid water, possibly the same size as all of Earth's oceans combined. When the sun becomes a red giant, Pluto may be a suitable place to go. Story 59. Yawning only has a theoretical function but nothing definitive. The most commonly accepted theory is that it encourages oxygen flow to the brain when we are tired. More fascinating, however, is the correlation between the yawning reflex and a human's capacity for empathy. No other animals yawn when they see others yawning because they do not process empathy the same way as humans. Furthermore, you have an 80% chance of yawning either when seeing someone else yawn or thinking about someone else yawning if you can visualize their face. Except the urge to yawn after seeing someone else do it does not transfer if you cannot see the other person's eyes. So, if someone yawns in a room with 10 other people, statistically about 8 of those people would also yawn. If the person who yawned, however, covered the top half of their face, nobody would get the urge. Story 60. Red pandas are not actually related to pandas or raccoons. Their closest relative is an extinct species called Cymocyan batelleri. Story 61. The brace position that passengers are instructed to assume in airplanes is designed to minimize injury during an accident. Story 62. The distance from your wrist to your elbow is the same length as your foot. The distance of your arm span is the same length as your height. Story 63. In Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, there is a scene where Obi-Wan is in a bar on Coruscant and is approached by a man trying to sell him death sticks. Obi-Wan shoos him away using a Jedi mind trick. That character is played by the same actor who played Mouse in The Matrix. Story 64. Octopuses have 3 hearts, and if they get too stressed, they can literally die from it. Same to be honest. Story 65. I can write cursive backward and write with both hands. I am sure I can print backward as well, but that is too easy. Story 66. To produce a silent but offensive fart, clasp your buttocks and pull them apart as wide as possible. The fart will be whisper quiet while still producing a strong odor. Story 67. I was going to explain how easy it is to make mustard gas, but I will leave it because I might get into trouble. Story 68. When you pass gas, there are microscopic particles in the air that get trapped in your nose hairs, allowing you to smell it. Essentially, you are inhaling particles from that person. Story 69. Warning: disgusting. Whenever you have sex, your penis's first instinct is to spread deoxyribonucleic acid, but your brain stops it from doing so. Story 70. If you go to hunting and see no doves and start drinking beer and decide to shoot the beer cans instead, the more beer cans you have to shoot at, the fewer cans you actually hit. This would make a good calculus one-word problem. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.